As I say here, waiting for my flight to Malaysia, I want to give you my honest first impressions of the country. But before we get into that, let's talk about the difference between Malaysia and Singapore, which includes their airports and people, as well as reasons to visit, if you can, both countries. So let's start off with the location of Malaysia and also Singapore. You may not know, but Singapore is all three. All three of what? It's a small island, it's a city, and it's a state. And the location is at the southern tip of Malaysia. Before Singapore gained its independence, Singapore was part of Malaysia. So what's common in both countries is culture and the people, of course. Both countries have a diverse cultural influence due to what I just mentioned, which includes the historical backgrounds. Okay, now I have finally boarded the plane. And to get back to what I was mentioning in the last video about the different types of airlines you can choose, here's an example. This flight one-way ticket from Singapore to the capital Malaysia cost me $50 one-way ticket. So like I mentioned before, if you're in the Southeast Asia area, it is very cheap to move around from country to country, unlike some continents. And as I say here, thinking about the continents, that it's kind of difficult to maneuver around from one country to the next. North America, if you're living on the east coast of the US like myself, to go to just to Toronto or even to Mexico, it's not cheap. If you're in Africa, to go from one country to the next bordering country, it's not cheap. South America, from Brazil, for example, to Colombia, it's not cheap. The only continent I can think of right now is probably Europe. It's very cheap to maneuver or go to the next country, but it's not as cheap as Asia. Now, since you know that, let's go back to what I was mentioning about both countries and the culture. Even though it's two different countries, both countries share the multi-ethnic population, including Malays, Chinese, and Indian people. So that's what you'll see once you come to Malaysia. And you'll be able to witness this more once you see more of my video series here in the country of Malaysia. Something else that I noticed while being in Malaysia is the cost of things. Malaysia is a much cheaper country than Singapore. And from that, I can also say that it seemed like Singapore is more developed, and maybe that Singapore has a better economy. And just from meeting people here in Malaysia and asking them how much they get paid, I can tell that the economy is a little bit better in Singapore, because my friends in Singapore get paid way more than people I know here in Malaysia. So it seems like Singapore does have a little better economy than Malaysia. Something that's very important when you travel internationally is language. So my impression of the language here in Malaysia, well, I can say that English is widely spoken, just like in Singapore. And compared to other Southeast Asian countries I visited, it seemed like English is spoken more widely here in Malaysia versus Indonesia or Thailand. So that is a plus. That is a good thing if you're coming from a different country and you're wondering about how is the language in Malaysia. From what I'm witnessing so far, no problems whatsoever. And I say language is important because there's some countries that you will visit in the world where whatever language you speak, they do not. And to some people that might be a problem, but with myself, I've been to countries before that I did not know the local language, and I was able to thrive. And a little side note, when it comes to language, don't let a language that you do not know of hinder your opportunity to travel to that country. Something I did notice upon my arrival here to Malaysia, just from leaving the airport taking the taxi, I saw a lot of natural beauty here in the country of Malaysia. So I was impressed by that, because I do know sometimes when you go to countries or to a big city, it's not a lot of greenery. It's a lot of buildings and that's it. No trees, no natural beauty. Well, I saw the opposite here. There are still lots of buildings and everything, but at the same time, there's greenery, there's natural beauty here. So now, since you see that I have arrived, you might be wondering, well, how was the flight here? Well, the flight is not long. It took about an hour and 15 minutes, so I didn't even get a chance to take a nap, mainly because I was just so excited of visiting a new country in Asia. Maybe that was the reason, but the flight wasn't long, and of course, it depends on your airline of how the experience will be. And with mine, it was good. I can't say anything bad about the flight here to Malaysia. And I've had many different flights from different airlines from just visiting Asia over the past years. And I never had a bad experience on any flight I can think of, except, let me see. Well, I did have a bad experience one time leaving Singapore coming back home, but it wasn't the airline's fault, it was the weather. And with that came lots of turbulence, and it made me sick. Any kind of turbulence on a flight, I get very nausea, and it just makes me sick. That's just how my head and stomach work. But yeah, overall the flight was it was great. No bad things to say. Now, since we're here at the airport, let's talk about how the airport is in Malaysia, in the capital. Well, if you have been following me for a while, my weakness is packing for a vacation or extended vacation. So on this flight here to Malaysia, I have two pieces of luggage and a book bag and a duffel bag. So I brought a lot, and I'm glad I did, because I didn't know how long I was going to stay in the continent. And with me, when it comes to traveling, I think it's just a little better for me to overpack than to underpack, because I really don't like buying extra things when it comes to clothing or shoes in another country. I just rather have everything with me. But usually what happens at the end is I have all these clothes and shoes, and half of the items I don't even wear. Yeah, I know it's kind of bad, but if it was a planned 1 week trip or 2 weeks, I'm pretty good. But anything like for 3 weeks or a month, I'm very bad at packing. But let's move on to the airport. My first impressions of the airport in the capital of Malaysia. Well, Kuala Lumpur International Airport, as you can see, is very modern, and also the time I came, it was very busy. You can judge for yourself comparing other Asian airports or international airports you have visited, but it seems like everything is state of the art. It's like your normal airport. You have shopping and dining and different types of luxurious boutiques, local eateries that you can try and test the local foods while you're at the airport before you exit, in which I never try unless I'm very hungry or the flight was that long that I need to eat again. I would rather wait until I exit the airport and get close to my accommodation of where I'm staying before I try the local eateries in that particular country. And also, you may not know, it's cheaper versus eating anything at the airport. Again, unless I'm very hungry, then I'll eat at the airport. Also, if your religion is Muslim, there's prayer rooms. Also at this airport, there's medical services. Of course, it's child care facilities. And the big one is free Wi-Fi. So that's very big. But overall, it's an international airport. So any country you go to, if you're going to the international airport in the major city, it's going to be a great experience. They're going to build up that airport to represent not just that capital city in that country, but just to represent the country. Now, things change when you go to the smaller cities and you go to more of the domestic airports. It's a big difference. International airport versus domestic. An example of this is when I went my first time to Morocco. And Morocco was my first Muslim country anywhere that I visited, and it's in Africa. And my destination was the city of Agadir. Now, Agadir is a smaller city, and there's no international airport there. Therefore, I had to go to the capital first, layover, then proceed to Agadir. And once in the domestic airport of Agadir, That's when I realized, it's really no comparison to the capital international airports versus the local domestic airports. The facilities are different. Usually, it's much smaller than the international airport. So it is a big difference when it comes to the experience once you go to an international airport versus a domestic. But overall, I think the big question, or what determines how the international airport is, the number one thing is what you're about to see right now is customs and immigration. I don't really care about the facilities or the shops and dining. I care about how easy it is for me to actually go through customs and immigration, the requirements, and just how efficient the lines are. To me personally, that what determines how good an airport is. Even though this was a busy day I arrived on, the lines were not that bad. It didn't take me an hour just to get through. It took some time, but I was able to get through, showed my passport, and that was it. Now, what I did was I wanted to exchange some of my Singaporean dollars for Malaysian money. And the currency here in Malaysia is called Malaysian ringgit. Now, since I have my luggage, it's time to exit this airport. And you may not know, but there is no Uber here. The ride sharing app here is called Grab, and I do not have the app. I never use Grab. So this is something you may want to do before you come here, is download the app Grab, or just do like myself and get a taxi. It's not like it's super expensive, but it's probably more expensive than you downloading the app Grab. Of course, that's going to be much cheaper. So now I'm officially in the city of Kuala Lumpur, and that's how I go about entering a country. Once I land and I'm at the airport, I really don't consider that I'm actually in that country until I exit the airport. And the reason I don't count that is because I've traveled to many cities throughout the world and had long layovers, and I never left the airport. So does that really count as me being in that country when I never actually left the airport? I was just in the airport. So if you're in the airport and never exit, does that count? So now let's talk about my first impressions of the infrastructure here in Kuala Lumpur. So far, I think the infrastructure here is very modern, also mixed with original tradition, because I know there are some small towns and villages here in Malaysia, and I noticed that there were different types of tours that I could go and see some of these small towns and villages. So kind of reminds me of visiting Port Louis, which is a city in Mauritius. The only difference is that Kuala Lumpur is much larger. Also, it's more modern than Port Louis, which is in the country of Mauritius, which is in Africa. Malaysia is cheaper?
Yeah.
Right, of course. But does it taste better, or is more?
Here the foods are like all homemade.
Okay.
Here got many homemade foods.
So it's more, I guess, Malaysian foods here versus Singapore? Because Singapore now seems like it's more Chinese
Yeah.
than any other people.
Chinese. Here got many three religions like India,
Right.
Muslims, Chinese,
Right.
and now is new is Arabic food.
Yeah.
Arabic food also got. So got many choices. So can taste everything. Here got one Little India. Little India is for all Indian foods.
Is that near Times Square?
Yeah. Cal Central. That's the name of Cal Central. You
Okay.
just say need to go to Little India. Sir can go to Little India. That side, sir can go to Patali Street also. The Patali Street is the Chinese foods. This side, nearby to Sir's
Continue straight for 8
hotel
minutes
is
to exit
Arab
607
Street.
Putrajaya.
All shawarma, all got. And then this side, nearby, all of the place got one Muslim shop. So sir can taste all.
Everything is there.
Yeah.
And where is the Twin Towers?
Window also nearby to Malaysia Tax.
Can you need to take a taxi or can you walk?
Take a monorail is better.
It's better.
Please don't take taxis. Because the meter taxi sometimes will be price. So you can use the app,
Grab.
Grab app. That's better. Because sir will know the price earlier.
Okay.
Sometimes it will be changes because of toll. The toll means like need to pay the tax for the road.
Wow. And that's illegal? Okay.
That's not so much. It's about 10 ringgit, 10 ringgit,
10 ringgit.
3 ringgit, 4 ringgit. Like that. These are all already included, but Grab
Speed camera
never
on
include. It will be rise up at there only, not so much.
Okay.
If meter taxi, they will be, they said, very near place, but they will round to make.
Extra money.
Yeah.
Wow.
Got many scam. 1 hour.
Oh wow. Yeah, I need to take a flight.
Yeah. 1 hour flight. And Sabah.
Sabah.
Yeah. Sarawak. Got many place. Near Brunei. Wow, traffic jam. Started.
So it's always traffic around this time?
No, incident.
So what we can take from this little conversation you overheard is that also Arabic food has become popular in the country of Malaysia. And I'm trying to think, have I tried? Yes, I have tried Arabic food before, I remember, and it wasn't bad. And probably, depending on location, I might try it out again here. It all depends. But also, what you can take away from this conversation is what I mentioned earlier, which is the app Grab, because there is no Uber here. And he himself, he said that it's best to use Grab because if you take a regular taxi, sometimes, like I mentioned throughout like different videos, they can take you the scenic route, which costs a little bit more money, or they can change the meter. And this not just only happens in Malaysia, but it happens in lots of different countries I've been to. Brazil, Colombia, Ethiopia, South Africa. They'll take you the scenic route, or somehow with the meter, they know how to do things to manipulate the original price. So you're basically overpaying. And I'm assuming this guy, probably part-time, he works for Grab, but he's just a regular taxi guy that I found and I got. So he's basically telling, the truth of how it works here. So he probably doesn't have a big problem of telling his customers, the truth if they ask about Grab or how taxis are here, because he does probably both. Have you ever visited a country before and you didn't find out until later on that you overpaid for a taxi ride? Let me know down in the comment section below. It's probably happened to me many times, but I do remember, especially in Brazil, because I've been there so many times, that I have so many friends in different cities. When I go to a particular city, they would ask me, how much did you pay for a taxi to get to a certain place I'm trying to get to? And then when I tell them the price, they be like, nah, you got overcharged. It's supposed to be this price. And the reason I mentioned Brazil is because I was going there before it was such thing as Uber. There was no Uber app. It wasn't invented as of yet when I first went to different countries throughout the world. But I'm saying in particular Brazil, because I just have a lot of friends there. And it got to the point that I actually knew how much it was supposed to cost. Until later on, that's when Uber, of course, changed everything. And you may be wondering, well, why is there no Uber in Southeast Asia, or why it's not very popular in the continent of Asia? and it's because of Grab. If I'm not mistaken, the owner or CEO or developer of the app Grab, I think he's Singaporean, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe he's Malaysian. Either or, I know he's from Singapore or Malaysia, but he lives in Singapore. I might have it all backwards. I'm gonna find it and put it up on the screen. But it's because of influence. If you may not know, a lot of things that people use as of today is all American. You watching YouTube? That's American. You drink Coca-Cola? That's American. Do you have a McDonald's? That's American. You use Instagram, Facebook? That's American. Everything people use is basically American. Therefore, what comes with that is what? Influence. So, especially with Asia, not that they're anti-American, because I'm pretty sure whatever country you go to, it's still something there that's American, but they're trying to move to using their things, their apps, their inventions, the things that they created, and one of those is Grab. When I was in Mauritius, I talked about this as well. In Mauritius, there's no Grab and there's no Uber. They have their own app. Also, same thing in Ethiopia. They have their own ride-sharing app. Overall, the city of Kuala Lumpur has been a very surprising first impression of the city and country because I have never been here before. And I'm kind of surprised throughout all these years, especially from visiting Singapore, why I have not visited right next door to Malaysia. But finally I have, and now the real fun has began. I'm headed to my apartment, and from there you'll see more videos of me actually going out. Of course, I gotta eat, so me testing out the Malaysian food, and you might see me with some of my friends that I have met online, seeing them the first time in person. So stay tuned for some of those videos. And also, I'm excited because this was a one-way ticket to Malaysia, but also have another ticket going to another new country. So stay tuned for all of that. Thanks for watching.